28th meeting of the Health and Education Committee meeting. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Health Department report.
Good evening. Okay, I bring to you my February report. A couple of notable things. We finally have gotten a pretty steady staffing pattern in our Smyrna site for WIC. And, the state had given us a 3-day-a-week position up there that we share, 2 days in Wilson and 3 here. And then we send somebody from Murfreesboro up there 2 days a week, so they actually have 2 full-time nutrition help doing the WIC. And we saw a little increase in that showing there. And we expected that would happen. We've also seen across the state, and we talked about this last month, that WIC encounters are down a little bit across the state. And that just goes up, it flows up and down as the economy is good or different things change. That will affect that number. Also, as a county, we're working with the Rutherford County Wellness Council to move forward on being one of the governor's designated community, healthier Tennessee communities. And it's basically a lot of things that we're already doing, having a wellness council, working towards some healthier goals for our county. And they send out a checklist after you say you're interested, and you work 30-day goals, 60-day goals, 90 days. So we're working with our volunteer group of community members called the Rutherford County Wellness Council to try to move towards that goal and hopefully not only get that designation, but there's a $5,000 grant that if you meet some of the goals that they allow you to get as well, that we could use to do wellness and prevention in the community. So that was something we worked on this month as a community outreach.
Any questions for Ms. Garrett? Not entertain motion.
Move to approve the report, Madam Chairman. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yes, the other thing was Ms. Nolan recommended I go ahead and bring my budget sheets to you guys. And I had to borrow her copy, so they have a few notes if you written in the margins. Do you have a copy?
Nope.
Sorry, Ms. Adams. There you go. Thought I'd given one. Does everybody else have one? Okay, so the first one is budget 55110, and last year you can see we're asking for less than we budgeted for last year. This one notation note that she has, the $2,752, that's the money that the state is going to allow us to keep local and spend on prevention projects. So we're putting that in a different line item. That's what her note is there.
It looks like last year's budget was less than the year before, and this one is less than last year.
Yes, sir.
You talked to him about this?
He says mine's easy.
I don't think I disapproved anything.
Yeah.
Could you coach the school system?
Do I need to go over each one and then, or how should I do it?
Only if there's
Yes,
items of significance that
Okay.
have changed, yeah.
Okay. And then the dental health program budget, 55160, we're asking for exactly what we budgeted for last year.
Is there
That one?
any changes in that?
No.
Your dentist fell on board?
Yes, I know, it's been wonderful. It's been great. Knock on wood. 55170, it's the tobacco settlement dollars that we get. If you'll see the note, we're hoping, we've requested an additional $30,795, that they had some leftover funds, and they said that was the amount I could request. So we wrote up a proposal and submitted that, but we have not gotten it yet. But that's just what that note is on there.
What's in your proposal? What kinds of things?
Yeah, so we're working a lot with the teen peer training. That's been very successful in the data, in the statistics of showing to really make a change with middle schoolers is to have their peers talking to them about this. So they've been trained, they went to some, they're giving us input on programs. So pulling that committee together, they've gone to a couple different trainings. One was in Gatlinburg, one was in, so funding that again this year. That's the biggest part of that money, is to fund those kids.
How long does this, how far out there is the tobacco settlement
Well, the agreement,
out there? I mean,
Oh.
I just wonder.
When will it go away?
I wonder, I do not know the answer. I know that this was the first time ever they had agreed to put a small, and it's a very, very, very small percentage, into prevention of tobacco use. Other states had done that and we kind of followed suit. So this was the first time that we had ever, as a county, received some money to help fight tobacco issues and to do prevention. And it was a 3-year thing, and the legislative branch said, we'll let you have this money if you show us that you're doing good with it, we'll hopefully give you more. And in Rutherford County, in all 3 categories, we saw a decrease in those 3 years where we had targeted programs that were funded through that. It was the women who smoke while pregnant, that percentage went down during our 3-year time. Middle schoolers who report that they have smoked, that number has gone down, that percentage has gone down. And then secondhand smoke was one of the other, and the way they decided to judge if that was getting better was asthma diagnosis in the ER. And it was very small, but we did see a small dip in that number here in Rutherford County. So that's all 3 areas showing positive. So that was one reason why when they had some leftover money that didn't get spent in other counties, they sent us that notice saying you could do that, because we had success in all 3 areas. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to be competitive in getting some more. That's in the discussion right now with our Commissioner of Health. And
So this will give you an opportunity to do more
yes,
this time.
yes, absolutely. So this will be on the current.
What about the e-cigarettes?
Yeah, well, that's a part of our training. All of the trainings that we do, we're talking about that. Where we saw a spike in that a lot, and so we actually worked with the designers of some of the curriculum and had them rewrite it, were pregnant women. They were thinking that was a safe alternative. And really, we don't know. We don't know what all kind of chemicals and the concentrations, and we just don't know the bad side effects to that yet. So it's really not recommended in pregnancy, because everything crosses over that placenta and goes to the baby. So we actually helped the university rewrite the curriculum that's taught to doctors, so they know how to talk to their patients about, stopping that and not picking up another habit like an e-cigarette. So yeah, we have added that in. The kids also, because they come in all these different flavors and they think they're cool and not necessarily harmful. So that's part of the curriculum. We're working a lot with the peers on.
I'm sorry, that may have been an unfair question to ask you, but I just wondered, because that was a large settlement or whatever, and I just wondered what the long term is.
I know.
How long we could depend on getting anything out of that. Because,
Yeah. I'm curious to know. I don't know. And then the last one is 55190. So this one is fully funded by the state. We just send in the voucher and they pay us every month at the county. So there's no real changes there except what the state has authorized. And Lisa's note is that some of our part-time employees will qualify for insurance, so we budgeted that in there. If they work over 30 hours for a certain amount of time, they could qualify for. So that's what that is.
Any questions for Ms. Gary? Is this your final version? You ready to?
Yes, yes.
Do we want to vote to send it on the budget, or we want to wait and just let her present on schedule? Or-
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
looking forward to the budget committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We seem to have dodged major bullets when it comes to epidemics, flus and other types of viruses, and school systems across the state were shutting down, and it didn't seem to affect us nowhere near what it did other schools. Why?
I wondered that myself, with several counties close to us closing for flu. But when I would talk to Dr. Odom about the attendance rate, they didn't see the fluctuations that they saw in some of the other counties. I wish I had a better answer. I just really don't know. I don't know if that was luck of the draw. With the Zika and different things like that, we had a small number of issues with that, and it just depended on where people were traveling and were coming back in your community, those kinds of things, how much they prepared before they left, those kind of issues that affected it. So we've seen spells of different things that have popped up in our community, but we've just been lucky with the flu and some of these recent things that we've heard. Flu does hit hard in February, March, and we have seen an increase of patients coming in into the health department and numbers being reported from other clinics, but still not to the degree in some other communities. We have quite a high rate for the state. Around 55% of our residents get flu vaccinations, and even when flu vaccination isn't perfectly on target, like maybe it doesn't have strand B and that's in there, the research shows that if you have the vaccine on board, you'll have a much milder illness and be able to return to work and school quicker.
There has to be a reason, and I just wondered if you could guess what that reason may be. You said we were lucky, and it's probably more than luck. And
Well, maybe it's the higher rate of immunization against flu, if you're thinking specifically of flu. You said all epidemics, or you were mentioning epidemics, and so that's one of the things, is we have a higher rate of that.
Jeff, did you get any calls from other school systems saying, why aren't you affected like us?
Not in accounting.
Very often, Rutherford County is a very long county. And very often we'll see, and we did see some this time with the flu, in more of the Laverne area and Smyrna, because they're associated a lot with Nashville and that areas. They had some, but we stayed above 90%. Now they dropped into 80s some there, and about the time they're getting over it, you start seeing it come maybe more to central Rutherford County. So at any given time, you just, very typically, when we have illnesses or flus or whatever it happens to be, it follows that pattern very much for us. And I think just simply because of the geographic span, when you get into these smaller counties, there's one high school or two high schools, and they're all there together, and we're just more spread out.
You guys do anything to communicate and promote the
We did
immunization process?
notified custodians, everybody else did extra disinfecting, that sort of thing that you tried to do. Sent notes to parents and really to tell them, please keep your child home if they're sick, you'll be excused. Please do that. That's your biggest problem, is people sending someone to school sick, if you'll know the truth.
Thank you.
Community care report.
We are doing good.
That report's on your tablet.
I move to approve the good report,
Yes.
the doing good report.
So, you got to support doing good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Special projects. Oh, Ms. Joe.
Added the 3 new projects to the report on page 5. The Siegel High Edition for $6,060,000, Laverne Mill Annex for $350,000, Roy Waldron Edition 2 for $350,000, and then I've increased the Oakland Middle Annex budget by the $12,875,000. That's basically it.
Any questions, Ms. Jolly? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. And School board, come on up, come on up.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any amendments from you all, but, is that right? No amendments? Okay. I really just want to give you an opportunity to talk to us about two things, if you can. One is the resolution that you all passed. When we received that, I had interpreted it to mean that you would like for the county commission to endorse something similar. My colleagues felt like it was a for information only resolution, so just, I want to give you a public
It was-
forum to talk about that a little bit.
It was primarily for your information today. I think it would not be good, our board is unanimous, no question about that, because I do think it does have an effect, or will have an effect if it does. I don't, if we were to be divided into commission level, I don't think it would be good for us.
Right.
Just, you know, we really do not know that the only voucher bill that's still basically surviving is what we're told, and they met today, but I don't know what happened today, is the one that affects Memphis. There were about at least five voucher bills. The one that affects Memphis is kind of a pilot program. I will say that that's a typical way that we get something started, and then we amend the bill, the law in subsequent years. So
Right.
I do think that they just have very difficult passing it statewide initially, and so many things may start that way. But the one that seems to be surviving is the Memphis. Now, Memphis have been sending people down to hearings too. They really are not for it.
Right.
Why have you
So-
picked us out, you know? But I do think sooner or later it will be an impact on us. But we have no clue about, for sure, on dollars and that sort of thing. I think Jeff did try to respond to some of that, and you may have shared that.
And then the second piece kind of feeds into that, and that was the message that I got about the reduction that we're seeing in federal dollars for Title I. That was the second thing I
Right,
wanted
I
you to talk
sent
about.
that to you yesterday,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
We did learn last part of last week, and we didn't expect any changes much till the 18-19 year, you know, when the next federal budget. But right now, we're seeing that our Title I person has received information that it looks like they're going to withhold $1,300,000 from our Title I for next year. You have 10 Title I schools. There's not a way to make it up, basically, as a commission. Many of them in your area, because the highest priority is the Smyrna Laverne. So we'll just have to, we'll meet next week, see, and again, it's still fluid from that thing. But I do think we did know, and it was actually stated from Washington, they would be taking many of those title funds, and because they're trying to do some zero-based budgeting, they cut something else to add. So the initiative to add for grant monies for charters, and very likely that's what you're looking at, to cut back on some of the title fundings and then place it in some of that other area. I think they were talking about that figure. So do not know that, but I do feel that somewhere around that $1,300,000 is probably very likely. And if you want to share that with the rest of your committee members, I'm fine. But that's just kind of the numbers that we had to break down by school in that. Title I, you know, meets individually with parents and theirs. They actually make their own budgets, and you've attended them. I've attended several of those Title I budget hearings. Some of you others may have too. But they'll have to go back in and look, because some of it is training, some of it is teachers and personnel. There'll be several personnel impacted by this number. And others could be materials and things used, again, for your highest poverty schools. But it does look like we're moving that direction. There's a couple of other title programs. Our teacher training is Title II from the federal government. We don't have a figure on that one yet, and it may not hit next year. It may be out the next year. We just do not know. All this has popped up really within the last, like I say, a little over a week to 2 weeks is what we're hearing. So everybody's asking. You ask questions, the state doesn't know either. So.
Yeah, this was really fresh on my mind because I had a chance in the last month to attend 2 of the Title I spring planning meetings for Smyrna Middle and for Laverne Middle.
How much was Smyrna Middle? Do you have that with you? It's 100 and something thousand, isn't it? That they attend that they're going to lose.
363,000.
363 for them. Okay.
That was the highest number.
And it's based a lot upon how many students you have there. That's a significant reduction.
Is the reduction statewide, or is it due to our numbers or results or something? Is that
No,
specific to us, or
it's
something we're
just,
getting?
that's coming from the federal government to reduction in Title
So
I.
it's a cut all the way across the state.
As far as we know.
Where our numbers have
Yeah.
changed or where our
Right.
scores or something have
The
gone
state
somewhere.
notifies us, federal monies go to the state for redistribution. And the state is the one that sent us that they would be receiving less funding from the state. And based upon your allocation, which is really based upon numbers of students, it would be this reduction for you. That's what you're seeing. And Ms. Wise did go through and then take, based upon our division here, to those 10 schools. So that's her calculation for the per pupil cost,
Right.
how much it would reduce them. So obviously the schools that are quite large would lose the most monies typically.
It was really interesting as you went over their budgets and you saw how they spent those Title I dollars in the past, really how much of that is spent in parent engagement and parent involvement and ways to support the parents and those families. And it was great. The technology was awesome. They were able to purchase lots of technology and get the kids more excited about learning. And there were just so many different interesting ways. But one of the ones that I know, it's one of the most number one complaints that I hear about from educators is that the lack of parent involvement is really what can affect a child's success. And so how much they focused on including those families and spending that money on that parent involvement, it seems like such a shame to go backwards when you're just not able to engage and reach those families. Because some of these schools were just now Title I schools, right?
You two
Yeah.
middle schools are
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
The allocation, you're required, and we'll see, this may change too, but you're required to spend a certain percentage for your parent engagement. You have kind of a range in there. A certain percentage it has to be spent on training of teachers and others involved with that. So will that change of your dollars? In other words, of that $1 you
Right.
receive, you have quite a bit of flexibility, but there's certain ranges that you do have to spend it on that come down from Title I. So we'll see. That's still kind of unknown to us at this point. I just thought you might be interested in
Yes.
knowing that early on.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any indication that the rules themselves may change with the money?
Not that we're not hearing that yet. Title I over the years has been one of Congress's most favorite program because it is directed towards the highest poverty students and the highest need students. So many times when federal budgets were cut, the Title I stayed. And early on, if you heard when they were talking about doing something, they were still saying that Title I might receive additional funds when they were talking about reducing some of the areas early on in this administration as they prepared their budget. So it seems to be more not a change in total dollars, but the allocation of those dollars. And they're building into this, I think, the charter grants is kind of what I'm seeing.
The Title I, the funds that you keep talking about, federal funds for Title I, is there any long-term statistics that shows that it works?
Well, I think what you see, I think you see things even in short term. And what it is because there's many studies in long term that children in poverty come in behind other students. And you just don't have a parent involvement necessarily at home, or parents that have been to school for 12 years or plus 12 years. They do not get to take trips, vacations. They just do not get the same level that your children or others might do. And so one of the things that Title I, and on the short term, what we can see is how are our Title I schools doing on state tests and how much gain. The state measures the gain for those students. And one of the subdivisions that you have with the state gains is students in poverty. And ESL students are done. There's several different divisions. The ethnic are separated out, but we can track it from our growth and do see that growth for those students. They're in the poverty schools. That if you start behind, you never catch up unless you gain more than the other students. I mean, because you have to gain more to catch back up, and that's very, very difficult for those students to do. To me, personnel are first.
that those EAs and those extra teachers that are interventionists, working with smaller groups of students. And many of you, when we went with, I think it was Roy Waldron, the mayor went there too, and saw those groups. We went one afternoon, saw the teachers teaching the groups and little groups in the hallways at that time and all, trying to reach kids in small groups that had a particular deficit in this area of math or in this area of reading, language arts. So it is one of the most impactful programs to me of all of the federal programs that we do.
And I don't remember the exact number, and I honestly don't remember which school. I think it was Smyrna Middle. But one of the two schools said this school year, I want to say they had something like 13 students, it may have even been higher than that were brand new to the country. Just brand new to the country, showing it. So
yeah, there's been a lot of those recently.
yeah.
They're just one school.
But the second those children show up in your building, they're expected to perform at the same level.
No, not really. That's Title III.
Okay.
Okay. Your ELL program is Title III. And again, just a reminder, people maybe watch us on television. I listened to a conference I was at recently. They talked about, hey, we got about 20 different languages spoken in our school district. We got 80 languages, English being the 80th one, in our school system. So those students, and then we have several different levels, but you do not, the test for them for the first year, they do not have to have English language arts. And then you have transition 1, transition 2. Typically, the students have been here a year, they're the first level of ELL. The second year, they typically transition 1 year out, and typically transition 2 years out. And so some of your weighting is based upon how many students in those levels. The other day when I checked, we were like in just kind of the first levels, about 2,800 or so. If you add in T1, T2, 3,300 or something like that was a number that I was seeing. It's a fluid number and it keeps changing, but I think we will be this year, when the report comes out, the third largest DLL population. It'll be Metro Nashville, Memphis, and then Rutherford County. We were a little bit behind Knoxville. We were fourth. They had less than 100 more than we did. So it wouldn't surprise me at all this year, based on the numbers I've seen, unless they've grown a lot also, that we very well may be third in the state. Those Title I funds, if I remember from public safety meeting last night, school board, BOE, is taking over Title I in the juvenile detention and administering all of that. So I assume that's part of the program that. If it's Title I dollars, again, the state allocates it and divides it based upon whatever rules the feds have for that. I just want y'all to know kind of ahead of time, but we're going to try to see what we can do to deal with it. I don't anticipate there's no way to replace it all with local monies. You can't do that. If the feds back off from it, it's going to change things. So you just can't replace $1.3 million like that.
Any more questions for the school board?
I was trying to figure out what 80 languages there are. I didn't really.
I can bring you a list. Help me remember.
No, I wouldn't know how to
I'll
read
be
it.
glad to share that with you, because we have the list.
3 or 4 years ago, the
Yeah,
Chamber
we
of
did.
Commerce told me we had 40 different languages in Laverne. So I can imagine with 80 in our county schools, yes.
The most recent groups have been really Sudanese and all, and some of the different, sometimes it's a different dialect of a major language, but it's still different.
Yeah.
And also, we've seen more of this spring, I guess, and winter, more really from the African continent, a little bit more.
I worked with a mission group with Sudanese refugees, and one of the language groups they talked about was the Dinka. I met a couple who had been translators there. So basically, when this phrase Dinka, it's like saying Romance languages, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese. They're not
All the same.
all the same, and we're getting these subgroups, and I see some interesting requisitions for translation services on occasion.
Well, you're required by law, if you have a parent conference, the parents do not understand English, provide an interpreter. In fact, I attended at Roy Waldron theirs, and they were having their Title I budget meeting, and there were 2 interpreters there at that meeting with parents that were part of that. But one thing we want to know, and the people that listen to us on television, when we teach these students, we teach them in English. Tennessee's law is an English-only state. Now, we typically try to have some educational assistance and things that cover those major languages, be it Spanish or be it some of the African languages, and we can usually find somebody to be some of those educational assistants that do that to help those kids do the transitions. But the younger you are, the quicker you learn that second language or so. So they're kind of amazing how quickly they come around when they're speaking to each other and dealing with each other as children. They communicate.
It's got to be a difficult job, and I mean, for our teachers to have to deal with this, that just has to be something. I mean,
well,
I
let me
know-
tell you another figure, and this will show up on next year's budget for sure. The state is reducing the ratio from 1 to 40, 1 teacher for every 40 that's in that ELL category I'm talking about, to 1 to 35. That takes Rutherford County 13 additional teachers. Now, the impact across the state, they'll put physical notes on it, minimal impact, but it's 13 for us just to get from 1 to 40 to 1 to 35. And you can multiply that by, with fringement, about 60,000. So you can see what that one thing does to you.
I could see. I know when I left high school and went to MTSU, my English 101 questioned if I was writing English, so I can imagine what that would be like. Just trying to deal with all those different languages and work with that.
With the state reducing the ratio, there is additional funding anticipated, so it'll not all be, hours expense. There will be some more state monies. Will it cover it all? Typically not, because we know that the state's average salary is about $44,000 last I saw. When they say a teacher position, they'll say 44 or something. By the time you pay the insurance and the other, our figures typically run from 50 up to 60, somewhere in that range, depending on degree, experience.
Do we have that many teachers coming in with the
We recruit
ability
them.
to work with those
We
type
recruit them.
languages?
We go places to try to make sure to recruit them. Now, MTSU, it actually is something that's grown all over Middle Tennessee. So more of your universities are now having programs at ELL, or they go back and add the ELL endorsement to that. But it is really difficult. We actually, at our early, when we had the recruitment fair earlier in late January, I guess, this year, we did see about 4 or 5, and we pre-signed some to contracts in anticipation because we knew this was coming, because that's a rule making from the state board. So that had already been done. That's not something legislature deals with. So, other than the funding piece,
How
so we
is
knew that.
Rocky Fort Middle coming? I drove back there a few days ago, about a week ago, and looked
We
like
still think we're on track.
it looked like the buildings up and everything. Like it's looking like a school.
And you're under roof, that sort of thing, so you can work indoors and do lots of things now that you're not as hampered by the weather as you were
You
earlier.
think August is
I think
a go?
I think we're a go. Mr. Clardy keeps telling me that, and he's pretty good.
And Dr. Sullivan is hiring his staff, so.
Yeah, we've done that.
If Smyrna would just get on the ball and get some road work done.
It's probably gonna start out a little bit congested, would you
I think so.
imagine?
Well, I want to thank you all for what you're doing for Laverne, because we need it.
We're looking at, and some of, we're kind of, we listened to what you said, budget and finance, to see where we can add. And so, with this last thing, we're looking at additions probably again to possibly Roy Waldron because of all of that growth that you're having. We're also talking about an addition to, to Laverne Middle School. Also, Mr. Clark is kind of taking it up on his own. Let's go out and take a look at Siegel down the road and see so much growth in that little corridor over there down to Las Casas and out there next door to Oakland Middle, even though you approved the funding, go ahead and go with that. But let's look and see what we can do there in addition and what could be added there. And we're looking at some other places too. Rockville Elementary is an issue. Christiana Elementary is an issue.
How did the storm?
It will surpass $100,000 write-off is what we're hearing basically. It basically just peeled it back. I have not been out there this week, but they did the patching. They were out there patching that night, trying to. And it just peeled it back and rained inside. It's what it did. And then it also blew down one of the light poles on the softball field. And when the pole came down with the light thing on it, it punctured a hole in another part of the building. So they had to do that, and we had to cut the poles and all off of that. I contacted Mr. Cates with Rick and tell him that I think he'll be okay. But we're just we're counting up computers. Some of the areas that it rained on is a computer lab. We've turned them over, brought in to drain them, dehumidifying fans, that sort of thing. Wanted to wait much of this week before we even try to turn them back on. Let's see, just try to get them totally dried out and see what we have there. But we'll put even textbooks, that sort of thing. We're trying to list all of that when we do the report for the insurance. I don't know what the figure will be yet.
Yeah. I signed off on $78,000 on 2 requisitions one day. But that was so close to when spring break hit.
They're supposed to be replacing the roof this week, like I say. They did the temporary repairs. They're supposed to be making more permanent repairs this week. But it was amazing that no one was hurt or anything. And actually, there were cars parked behind the building. It was one of their parent conferences night and activities. It peeled that roof off and laid it right on the sidewalk there, maybe that far from cars.
Wow.
Never did hit a single car. If they made it, just amazing.
But the school will be ready for business next week?
Yeah, we open Friday again.
Oh, I heard that got postponed, so it did open up.
We literally probably could have opened Thursday, but teachers had lost so much material and stuff. There's the human capital that you also have to consider at the same time that you consider your physical damage. And my decision was basically for Thursday was really the human capital piece, so that when kids come back in and all that everybody feels more comfortable and safe and that sort of thing. So.
Laverne Middle, I'm going to brag on them just a little bit.
Okay.
At our meeting out there, they told us that one of the things that they do, one of the things they're teaching the children, they had divided the school up into 5 communities.
That's happening in a lot of our schools.
They're dividing it into 5 communities. And there's some competition.
It is.
And they're teaching the children, if you drop paper on the floor, pick it up. You can open the door for someone and ask them where they would like to go, guest. They're teaching respect. And that's something we need, not only in the schools, but everywhere.
I agree.
And one of the teachers said, they just about run over each other trying to get, because they get points somehow. He said they just about run over each other to get that point to do whatever they're doing. So I'm proud of them. I'm proud of them.
Our growth this year over a year ago is still running about 1180, and it'll go up a little and down a little and that sort of thing. We'll see after spring break. Typically, though, families, more middle-income families, when you get to this particular point, even if the husband is transferred, they'll stay till school's out. You don't see as much changes from here on out, which for obvious reasons, to move the kids late in the year, families typically do not like to do that. So it tends to stabilize a little bit more, even when people are moving in.
Now, I was really pleased to see the character training, because that's really what we were talking about, is character education, which is a piece that, they desperately need, but we don't necessarily fund, or maybe you shouldn't fund, but they found a way to still incorporate it into that culture of that school, and you can feel it. I mean,
Well, another thing we're doing that our board passed at the last meeting too, and it'll start with next year's freshmen, is another SASH for those when they graduate that really is based upon much of that soft skills about community involvement, other things that the students do. They can track that, just like you can get a cord for being in the Beta Club maybe, or
Right.
something like that. We're partnered with Chamber of Commerce. We're one of the first, and there's 2 or 3 in the state that may be doing this. But the Chamber of Commerce is going to furnish the gold seal that goes on their diploma, and then the sashes, we'll put the sashes on there too. So again, when we meet with people from industry and with the Chamber of Commerce, they say one of the most needed skills are the soft skills. Kids been able to work together, collaborate together, arrive on time, you know, not miss a lot of time off work or days. And so this is tied through career and technical education, basically. It's tied back to that for soft skills to design that. And kids have several areas they can pick from, but there's a total number of points. I can bring that to you too if you'd like to see it, but I think it'll take a little while, but I do think it begins to focus on what you're talking about.
Character.
Yes.
Stuff your parents used to teach you. It's a shame. I mean, there are kids that don't have a clue how important honesty is, or how courtesy is, or know how to go do a job interview, know how to shake somebody's hand and look at that person and be respectful or whatever. The kids are graduating don't know how to balance a checkbook, you know, and it's stuff that mom and dad used to sit down with the kids and teach life lessons stuff, and I'm not knocking anybody, but I mean, it's just a shame that some of that stuff is not getting taught at home. Either because people are too busy working 2 jobs to get by, or whatever the situation is, you know. But
I knew
it's
your
a
dad,
shame.
and I say Will and Buddy probably didn't have a lot of options.
It bothers me. A while ago, Miss Garrett was talking about, and I mentioned in the previous meeting, having to teach people how bad it is to smoke when you're pregnant. You know, I mean, it just breaks my heart that's even an issue. You know, that people are doing substance abuse or everything when they're pregnant, and I know addiction's a bad thing, but there's a whole lot of things about society are really good, but a whole lot of things really scare me in this day and time.
Your Royal Waldron play, and with the number of kids that you have in their drama there, there's 6 or 8 of them going to New York this summer. Did you see all of that?
Yeah, I knew they,
Amazing.
last 2 or 3 years, we've had several. They go to
Yes.
Atlanta, from Atlanta
Yes.
to New York.
And they were picked basically in Atlanta from people from New York watching these kids perform and do, and offer them that opportunity. That's just
That's
really amazing.
Well, going back a few years, a lot has happened in this county.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys coming. Is there any new business for this committee?
We picked a date for joint meeting, budget, have we done that, or do we need to, or?
Jeff, have you? Yeah. Jeff, have you looked at that yet? A joint meeting date?
Budget and health and ed?
It's been set May 23rd. Yes.
Who said it?
Did you talk to Lisa?
I know
No,
graduation,
Joyce has it.
graduation for
It's in
Laverne
it's in
is
my
May
book,
the
so it's
20th.
off the budget calendar. I've
Yeah.
got it down for May
May
23rd.
23rd? Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've got health and ed on my, so it's our regular meeting
Regular
day.
meeting day.
That's what she tries to do.
Okay. All right, if there's no more business, we stand adjourned.